Hey everybody, John Faring here with Live Large Universe. We're ready for another amazing show tonight. So it's been a few weeks since we've had our last show. You might remember the last show we had was actually a very similar topic. We had Cody Brislin on from Dynamic Designs. He was on telling us the last episode where he had an incident in the backcountry where they had to go out and recover the sled and some of the best practices as a kind of somebody who's had an issue type of thing. And the person who's watching or going to be joining us tonight is Chad Guthrie from Backcountry Recoveries. Actually watched that episode and was inspired afterwards to reach out. He thought it was a cool episode and wanted to, share that he's got a recovery business and all the cool things that go with that. So we'll get to that here in a little bit. And so as you jump in, let us know in the comments where you're watching from, and please share the show out. So the way we get this show out so that people can see it from across the country is through all of your shares. And if you share it to your personal page, feel free to share it to some sled related pages, or especially if there's recovery kind of pages out there. But again, drop it in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. That lets us see your name and where you're coming from, and then get in to win Mountain Lab. So Mountain Lab is the one sponsoring tonight's show. We've got these two amazing saws, which will come in handy if you need to do a recovery, because heck knows we all get tangled up in trees sometimes. So make sure you get in there, share the show out. You'll be entered in to win the Mountain Lab saws. So let me drop that down and let me talk to you about a very, very important topic. So since back in like December, we kicked this off, the Avalanche Alliance sweepstakes. So as of tonight, we're at $72,000 and change that we've already raised, and we have 28 days left for the sweepstakes. And so there's a link in the show tonight that's going to allow you to click in this final month, and this is the maximum amount of points that are going to be allowed. Is you're going to get an extra 40% more entries. So for $25, usually you get like 10 entries. You're actually going to get 14 entries this time with the link that's in the show tonight. Share this out, help us raise some money, because all of this money for Avalanche Alliance sweepstakes, it goes to two major projects. So the first one is all of your Avalanche centers across the United States. They all are eligible to apply for grants against about 50% of the money that we raise this year. The other half of the money we're planning on putting into the Aries motorized scholarship program that yours truly here created back about 3 years ago. So it was LiveLARGE University Scholarship Program. We've educated dozens and dozens and dozens, if not over 100 now or more, people who are both professionals getting into avalanche education so that they can go out and train all of us. And we've got a lot of recreationalists who are parts of clubs. They ride with a lot of people. They're out there making a difference in their community, and through their application they were able to showcase that. So get in, make your donation, and you're going to get in a chance to win a brand new Ford F-350 diesel truck this year. So that diesel truck, man, 2022, it's all decked out. You can see in the pictures here, it's got these sweet logos along the bottom, the upgraded wheels, lift kit, all that. Just so you know, the Marlon sled deck in the picture here is actually our first place prize. So not the grand prize. The truck is the grand prize. First place prize is a Marlon sled deck. It's in the picture, but it's not going with the truck. It's going to be a separate prize. And then we have a second and third place prizes, and both of those are Climb and Fly Racing Snow. Both have put together a head-to-toe riding gear from head to toe. So get in on the Avalanche Line sweepstakes. Again, it's in the link of the show tonight. And right now, as of right now, $72,000 raised. We're shooting for over $300,000 this year. So we've got a lot of money still to go here in the last month. And then the last time you can get in on this is at the Jackson Hill Climbs. And then the truck will be given away in the first week of April this year. So you can still be driving it in 2023. So again, if you just joined us, jump in the chat here. Let us know where you're watching from, and you'll be entered in to win on the Mountain Lab prizes that are there. So again, let us know where you're watching from, and I'm going to bring on our good buddy Chad Guthrie here. So Chad, if you want to come off mute, we're going to bring you on the show here in 3, 2, and 1. Oop, let me go. I messed up one more time. There we go. How's it going, Chad?
Good. How are you?
Good. That's a pretty sweet poster behind you. Did you guys get that ready? Where do you use that at some of the local events and stuff like that, or where do you use that poster?
Yeah, like our fun runs and stuff like that, events that I sponsor
Very good.
and help put on and that stuff. So
very good. So welcome to the show. So I was letting everybody know right at the beginning here, I'm sure you were hearing me as I was chatting, was our last episode was about a recovery, and you tuned right
Yep.
in, and you were active in the comments. And then over the last several weeks, in between the shows, you had reached out to me, and we had coordinated a time to get together and to share a little bit about your story, what you do, and how you can help out a lot of us backcountry adventurous. Whether we're on snowmobiles, dirt bikes, jeeps, side by sides, kind of. It's almost endless, I'm sure. By the time you get down to it, that's you can get pretty creative
Yep.
with what you can get out of the woods, right?
Yep. Yeah. But I'm Chad Guthrie. I'm from Gooding, Idaho, and I grew up snowmobiling, motorcycles. From time I was little, and grew up doing it. So I've always done it. And then I actually had a snowmobile that I registered as a boat, and I'd run it on the water in the summertime. So I'm experienced to getting them out of water, and
Wow.
we'd we'd do an event. But once a year, we'd go down to the Snake River and we'd race jet skis with the
Okay.
snowmobiles. And so there's a few of us that started that, and so we had experience getting them out. And then in the mountains, we would, you know, basically I just started getting winches and stuff, basically for getting my own stuff out, helping buddies.
Yeah.
And so I've had, I just always been, up there and in different situations we were being stuck. And so I just got the winch, and then it all progressed from
Yeah.
there.
You
And
got you
because
got a lot going on that we're going to get into tonight here in some grand detail. But let's chat a little bit about first
yeah,
where are you located at. So remind everybody what part of the world you're living in right now.
I'm at a Gooding, Idaho,
Okay. And
which
so
is
go
about
ahead.
45 minutes roughly from Twin Falls.
Okay. Twin Falls, generally
There.
speaking,
So
is kind of southern, southeast Idaho. Like where would you call it?
yeah,
Okay.
southern,
Okay.
eastern.
Very good, very good. And
So
so, this backcountry recoveries is kind of a little bit of a, jokingly, of course, kind of a side hustle for you, right? It's not necessarily your full time job yet. I know it's something we're working
yep.
towards, but tell everybody a little bit about kind of your background. You grew up. Did you grow up in that area? And then tell us a little bit about your current family that you guys have there too. So, do you have any kids, or married,
Yep.
girlfriend, whatever you have? So,
Yeah, I grew up right here, kind of in this area. I did move to Moses Lake, Washington for a year
there you go.
at a high school. Took a job up there, but ended up coming back. And then I was worked for a mining deal, a sand and gravel outfit.
Okay.
And then I went into construction. And then on '09, when the economy tanked, I got into the dairy industry.
Okay.
And so since '09, I've worked for Automated Dairy as a full time job. And then it was actually in 2019 is when I set this up, as an actual business,
Okay.
set it up as an LLC and insured it. And then that was when I went ahead and bought the snowmobile that I have the winch on,
Gotcha.
that I do all my towing with.
Okay.
And so now I've done 4 different ones working with actual insurance companies
Okay.
on getting them out, getting stuff out of the mountains.
Yeah, got a lot going on there. So, what do you do for the dairy industry? I mean, you said where you work, but what do you do exactly in that job?
I'm in like the sanitation side, so I sell them all the teat dips and sanitation, the detergents and acids,
Gotcha.
inflations, and
Now you
basically
out
everything on.
visiting? Are you out visiting different farms and stuff, or like what? Because
Yeah,
you're on the road a lot. So
yeah. I spend most of my day on the road traveling between barns, and I check their inventories, to make sure they don't run out of chemical.
yeah,
And then kind of, if dairyman gets upset, I'm the first guy in line that gets the chewing, and
there you
then I got
go.
to figure out what we got to do to straighten it out.
You're a
So
problem solver by day and night. It sounds like so.
yeah,
Very good, very good. So, all right, well, let's jump in a little bit to kind of like, you're obviously a snowmobiler, you're a backcountry enthusiast, you do a lot of different things, but I'm guessing you didn't just magically wake up one day and think like, oh yeah, I'm going to get into the recovery business. I'm guessing there's a story behind this that, maybe you were out with buddies and you helped somebody out with the thing, and all of a sudden the idea just started to jump from there. So, give us a little bit of the background on like maybe the moment that it kind of hit you that like, hey, this could be a viable business. So, like, take us back in time to that moment that it started to kind of become an idea of doing the backcountry recoveries.
because I've done several snowmobiles and 4-wheelers for buddies and that,
Mm-hmm.
and then it was actually a buddy. Josh Hewlett. He was a service manager or the parts manager at Action Cycles and Sleds in Twin.
Okay.
And he called me up one day asking me about my winch, because I got a little gas powered winch.
Yeah.
And he was just kept asking questions. And I'm like, what do you got? Is it a buddy? Let's just go get it. And he's, well, it's a customer. And so then, like, the next day, they called me, called back, and he's like, it's 5,500 minimum for a helicopter, and they don't even know if they can get it because he was
Wow.
in a trail that was too narrow
Okay.
for his razor and rolled it, down the side. And luckily, there was like one tree that it caught,
Wow.
and it was upside down against that tree.
Okay.
And so I didn't know what to charge or anything. And so we actually ended up running it through another buddy's business so we could bill it for insurance.
Okay.
And I was just like, I'll go get it for 900.
Yeah.
Just spouted a number off. And they were thrilled. So we went in, winched it, rolled it over, got it winched back up the hill. We actually had to tether the front and the rear off to different spots to keep it from, make sure we didn't teeter it off that tree. Then we rolled it back over and got it turned and back up to the trail.
Yeah.
And we were actually able to get it running and was ride it out.
Very nice.
But there was a couple spots that we had to hook the winch up to the roll bar to pull it uphill.
Okay.
So we didn't lose it through another narrow spot.
So how did you end up with that gas powered winch in the first place? Like, is it just something you like needed at one point? Is it something that you thought like, oh, that's a good deal? Like, why did you buy it in the first place? Because not everybody has a gas powered winch laying around their house. So
yeah, because we had it was actually a Yamaha. I think it was an Apex.
Okay.
And
all jokes included, I have to say, like, it was a Yamaha Apex. All stories with winches start with, I was riding a Yamaha and it was so heavy. No, just kidding.
Yeah. No, I was up with some friends, and we ended up he blew the rod out the bottom of the motor.
Ouch.
And so we ended up having to tow over, we had to pull it up 4 different hills to get it up out of there. And so it was like at that point, we ended up finding one to borrow then.
Okay.
And so then after that, I was like, you know what, I'm going to buy one just to have it.
It's a good investment. It's one of those things that someday probably be on my list too. I've got I've got a few little ones. Like I've got a Warren gearbox that's like a drill winch. Like it's 750 pound rating is all just to haul a sled up the sled deck and that kind of thing. Like to get it off the ground. But I don't think I'd use it for any like massive recoveries. But it's nice for just dragging stuff around when you need it. So
yeah, they're handy.
Yep, cool. So you got this gas powered winch, and you're helping a buddy out, and this razor came out, and so that started this whole idea of like, man, this could become a business.
That was when I really got to thinking. I was like, there's more people getting into the backcountry, and these things are getting more popular. Yep. And I'm like, I don't know anybody that really has anything to get them out.
Yeah.
And so I went ahead and decided that I'm going to do it.
Okay.
So I just dove in and got it set up as an LLC.
Okay.
And then the hard part was actually finding an insurance company.
Okay.
To insure it through, because it was basically a niche market that nobody dabbled in.
Gotcha.
And I actually had a guy that came around from the insurance companies to take pictures of the equipment, basically doing an audit for them. And at that time, he told me, he's like, I look at like 2,500 businesses a year, and I've never seen one like this. And so I was like, well, that's definitely a niche then. So,
yeah, it's unique.
So I've just kind of kept it rolling and, advertising, and every year I just, seem to get busier.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. And so how big of an area do you try to service at this point? Like, I know you live kind of in that southeastern Idaho area. How far, let's say most of your business, is it all just in the local area within a couple hours away? And then how far do you go out on a regular basis? And then how far have you gone out maybe on an extreme case?
Because a lot of it, is just right here. The local guys have figured it out. And so I've gone up, and most of the time here, it's just day runs out of here, from here.
Okay.
But I went over towards the other side of Ryrie, over there towards Jackson Hole.
Okay.
And got a sled out for a guy over there that called me, and that's the one I actually wish had a GoPro on it,
Okay.
because it went for like a mile and a half to 2 miles wide open across them rolling
Ooh,
fields
wow.
before it went off over into the tree canyon over there above the Snake River. So
It's like Evil Knievel without the guy on the motorcycle, huh?
yeah, yeah. And then I went over towards Ennis, Montana,
Okay.
up there above Island Park, and here did that one like 2 months ago
Okay.
for a guy out of Minnesota, and he just sent me an Onyx pin that this is where the sled's at, and so I had to go. Never been to that area,
Yeah.
so I had to go study it on the maps, and then go over there and figure out how to get into it. Because when he sent me the pin, he's like, on the map it shows there's a trail,
Yeah.
and so I pull it up and I call him back, and I'm like, yeah, it shows it's a trail, but it's a motorcycle trail in the summertime.
Okay.
So we actually ended up going over there and exploring around and figure out how to get into it.
Okay.
And we ended up coming in from the bottom and basically just following that motorcycle trail in,
Gotcha.
and then started the process. That one took us 8 hours, a little over 8 hours, 8.5 hours by the time we left the parking lot to got back to the parking lot with the sled.
Yeah.
And it was just after dark.
Yeah. And as long as we're
That
talking
one
about,
was,
go ahead.
that was an overnight. We did that one overnight.
Yeah.
We went and stayed in Idaho Falls so we could get there earlier, and we ended up getting home at like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Wow. Yeah, so as we're talking about like these trips that you're taking, both locally, a little farther away and stuff too, you were sharing me with when a couple of days back when we were on our phone call kind of planning the show, you shared with me a little bit about kind of what your cost structure is. And so, if somebody calls you, they can kind of maybe have a halfway decent idea of like, yeah, if it's really back in there or if it's like an easy get out or whatever, like, what's your rates as far as like hourly rate? And then if you have to travel, like, travel time, like how do you construct it so that it's kind of fair for people, but also so that you're not going upside down on, wild goose chases?
Because, yeah, a lot of that, it's case by case on what it is because, because sometimes like that one there to Montana, that actually should have been like almost a 3-day trip.
Yeah.
And stuff. So I figure in, like I got to figure in motels, how many guys that actually I got to take with me,
Yeah.
To do it. Because it all depends on the terrain it's in. Like if it's just something I can go with my sled, which I call Brutus, and then the trailer I pull.
Yeah.
As long as I can just go in, load it on that and out, then, it's pretty fast.
Okay.
And that's what here local, I just do $150 an hour.
Okay.
And I start my GPS like from the time I leave, cross the railroad tracks, leaving town.
Yeah.
And then I stop it when I get back.
Gotcha.
And then that way they're not paying for me to fuel up or get packed up or any of that.
Gotcha.
So I do it to, stay fair.
Yeah. And I would say, are most of your recoveries like a half a day, all day? Like, how many hours do you have into a kind of an average recovery, do you think? For your local ones?
Part of them, like I've had some of them that I was, there and back with the sled in 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
And I've had other ones that are 8 hours.
Yeah.
So, but it all depends on, where it's at, how far, how much winching I have to do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about too of, if somebody is calling you, it's likely that, the next step after that would be a helicopter. And in some cases, like you said, a helicopter can't get in. And I think that's one thing a lot of people don't realize is that for a helicopter to come in and to snatch a sled up or just to do any kind of even like an emergency rescue for a person who's injured, like there has to be a minimum, according to protocol, about 100 by 100 square, a square area, about 100 foot by 100 foot, square, for a helicopter to be able to land safely, right? And so for them to be able to land, go over and, attach onto whatever the piece of equipment is and haul it up, and helicopters for snowmobiles, depending on where you're at, can on the cheap end be, $1,500 to $2,000 to $3,000, I'm sure, depending on how complicated it gets. And so, it sounds like your pricing is going to come in, at or below that in most cases if it's a pretty, normal recovery. But I'm
Yeah.
sure, like you said, some of them get really complex, and insurance companies are involved because the machine went over a ridge, and it's usually totaled in a lot of cases. And so how does
Yeah.
that work? Like if I've got a sled that, like, it's fully covered, fully insured, and it's gone off the ridge and it's obviously got severe damage, how do the insurance companies? It's something I guess I've never really thought about. Is how does an insurance company think about that? Like extracting it, is it part of the insurance coverage in some cases, or how does that work?
Yes, because yeah, on some of them, like from the way I understand, from most of them, is basically if that machine has damage and is physically unable to come out on its own,
Yeah.
then they will pay for the recovery. They've
Wow.
paid me to get it. But we had one where it was if they just blew the motor on it,
Okay. That
and
wouldn't
but
be
they
covered
won't
then.
cover just the motor.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's
So drag it into a tree then, and then hit. No, just kidding. Go over and push it into the tree. Like, oh yeah, the plastic's
yeah,
broken now. It's damaged. Uh,
yeah,
no, no, no. We don't endorse insurance fraud around here, people. None of that. None of that.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
um,
exactly.
okay. So let's
So
talk a little bit about some of the equipment you use. So let's start with snowmobile. I mean, most of the people watch this are snowmobilers, but let's start there. Like you've got a. Tell us about your snowmobile. You call it Brutus, you said, but give us some details
yeah.
on it because this isn't just your average snowmobile, right? So go for it.
No, it's a 2020 Skidoo Expedition Extreme,
Okay.
and it has the high-low transmission in it,
Very nice.
and it actually has a neutral also. And then I've got when I was putting it together, um, one buddy he's like, I didn't know they had road armor for snowmobiles because it's got bumpers that come around and
Yeah.
tie into the running boards,
Yeah.
so everything's tied into the tunnel. So it's not just pulling on the front of the sled; it's basically pulling on the whole thing.
Gotcha.
And so it's got a 2,500-pound winch hanging off
Nice.
the front of it, and then and then I strap my gas powered winch and everything to the tunnel,
Yeah.
and then I've got a chainsaw mount and stuff on it
Gotcha.
there. So
Did you say you
so
drag
yeah,
a
so when
trailer
I
behind it
decided,
too, or no?
yeah, I pull a trailer behind it too that I actually load the snowmobile on
Describe that
because
trailer. Like, what does that trailer look like? Is it homemade? Is it something you bought, or is it?
you'd basically you'd think it was like a dog sled trailer,
Okay.
when I first started with it. But now I'm doing, some other modifying to it and stuff to make it work better, making it a little wider
Okay.
and stuff on it. And then I've got a couple other trailers that I'm working on building
Okay.
that I can actually load like a side by side on with
Wow.
tracks or something and haul it out. So when they go down,
Would you do that with
and
you're not pulling that with the snowmobile, or are you pulling that with other vehicles that you have?
I've been pulling them with the snowmobile.
Wow.
So because I actually had a guy here a month ago that was stuck out at our local reservoir ice
Yeah.
fishing,
Okay.
and he was trying to find somebody to go out there with a tractor to
Ooh.
pull him out.
Yeah, you don't want a
And
tractor on
so
the ice.
yeah, and so he was off to the side because
Yeah.
the ice was he was breaking through the ice, so he was worried about going back in the afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he tried going a different way and went out there and just got stuck. And he said he was out there for several hours trying to winch it and get it
Ugh.
out.
What a nightmare.
And so they started calling people trying to find somebody with a tractor. And so somehow they got a hold of my sister, and
Okay.
she's like, just tell him to call my brother. That's what he does.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then they called me, and I told him, I was like, well, I got a snowmobile I can come pull you out with. And he called me back like twice, and he's like, you really think a snowmobile can do this? And I was like, yeah. And so he's like, all right, if you think so, go ahead and come.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I went up there, unloaded, and I think it was his wife and his dad or his father-in-law or something was in the car.
Okay.
And they're like, well, good luck. I guess we'll see you whenever. And I was like, oh, he'll be back here shortly.
That's
And
awesome.
so then they left, and we went out and hooked onto it. I got a Yankum rope
Oh wow,
too.
those things are awesome. By the way, like I'd always heard about those Yankum ropes, but like we were down in Tahoe about a month ago, and everybody was getting stuck on the parking lot, and we had chains, tow straps, and then one guy pulled out a Yankum rope, and I was just like, my mind was blown at what those things can do. And as soon
Yeah.
as I got home, I immediately bought one. So now I carry a Yankum rope in my truck and in my Jeep when I'm out and about too, because like man, they just like I don't know what the stats would be literally, but it's like it seems like it's like 2 to 3 to 5 times more effective than just a static rope.
Yeah.
So
Yep, they are. Because, yeah, the first time I got mine, the buddy had his pickup buried. His exhaust pipe was like ground level.
yeah,
He was in that deep and muddy. And I ended up having to chain all four of my pickup up just to
yeah,
get into where he is at. I couldn't even tell when that thing came tight and yanked him out of there.
that's crazy.
So yeah, they work good.
Awesome.
And but anyway, so I went out there with that and with the snowmobile and took a couple yanks to get him going to try and because he was trying to go and not spin a tire,
Yeah,
and I'm like, no, now I need you to spin the tire once we get moving.
yeah, yeah.
And once I explained it to him and got through, it was up the hill and back to the parking lot. From the time I got there, unloaded, and was back in the parking lot, it was like 45 minutes.
Wow, that's awesome. So you
Taking
got
there.
you've got the sled, and the sled's got a winch on it. But I'm picturing myself in a lot, or I'm picturing you in a lot of situations where you must need to anchor the snowmobile to other fixed objects, right? In order to keep the snowmobile from dragging towards the vehicle you're recovering. Do you always tie off to trees or something, or like what's your typical process that you do there?
Some I've only had to actually tether it off a couple times
Really?
because
Okay.
it actually holds pretty good.
That's surprising to me.
And
I think like a snowmobile,
is
like it's
the
going to just drag itself across if you're trying to drag something up a hill, I would think your snowmobile's like do you like spin the track to get it to dig in or something a little bit or
Yeah, I put it in kind of set the track a little
okay.
bit, and then I can sit on it and just hold the brake.
Got it.
But there has been a couple times that I've had to tether it off to a tree,
Gotcha.
with the strap, just because the angle of the hill, the
Yeah,
slope and stuff.
that makes
But
sense.
if it's not too steep or something,
Yeah.
then I don't have to. I had a side by side that a guy went up in the South Hills, and it was one of them Polaris Ranger crew cab deals,
Yeah.
and buried it, to the frame,
Hmm.
and was stuck there. And that was actually like Forest Service called me on that one too, and then some other friends recommended me. So I went up there, and the Forest Ranger cop was there, and said that he actually took it easy on the guy because he was there and helped. And since he called me, he, I can't remember what his fine was, but it
Yeah.
was a fraction of what it could have been.
Yeah, yeah.
And because he told me, he says, honestly, I was expecting two guys to show up with a track skid steer
Yeah, yeah.
to try and go get it out. And that was where that ranger there, learned about me. And so he's actually called me on a few now
Gotcha.
to go and get out. But yeah, he didn't think that thing was going to pull it out at all. And we got it right out of there and was headed back. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, outside of the snowmobile, what other equipment do you use for recoveries? Like, do you do summer recoveries with, like, do you have a side by side, a truck, a Jeep, or I think you told me at one point you had a skid steer yourself too? Talk to us about some of the
Yep.
other equipment that you use year round.
Yep. Yeah. One of my other buddies, he actually has a skid steer that I can use whenever I need to.
Okay.
And and we're kind of in partners on a couple different pieces of equipment and
Okay.
stuff too. And so, but yeah, so I've gone up. I had a guy that had a 3/4 ton Dodge crew cab pickup with an overshot camper, and he actually drove it up a 4-wheeler trail
Oh
and
wow.
slid it off to the side
Yowzer.
and was sitting there. And he ended up spending the night in the pickup. And the next day they called me, and he's like, "Oh, I'll just call a tow truck." And they were telling him that the tow truck's not going to go up there.
Yeah.
They'll go till the road ends, and that'll
That's it.
be it. And so the friends that were up there, they were like, "I know one guy that will come and get you."
Yeah.
And so I loaded everything up, headed up there,
Yep.
and that one, it was kind of strategic to make sure we didn't tip him over,
Yeah.
because we actually had to pull him back up the hill and tether off around some trees and send the razor down the hill pulling on him, and the skid steer doing the same. And then we ended up taking a come along and hooking to the front of the pickup so that the front didn't slide down.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah, they get kind of gnarly, and it's you mentioned earlier that you've got different like law enforcement or Forest Service agencies that have started to call you. Is one thing I know that was one thing that was on my mind when I first got in touch with you, or that you got in touch with me was just being involved with a lot of different things. I know that sometimes going on to Forest Service land can become very tricky, if you will, around different things that you
Yep.
need to do if you're out there making money on Forest Service land. In some cases, you have to get permitting and stuff too. And you had shared with me that a lot of times the Forest Service is giving you permission to go out there because you're not just showing up in a lot of these places. Like you're calling ahead, making sure that the Forest Service or the law enforcement agencies for that land management are aware of your presence and that you're on there and that you have their blessing to get on there. So I don't know if you want to elaborate on any of
Yep.
that and some of the partnerships that you've been able to establish.
Yeah, I work pretty close with all our Forest Service around,
Hmm.
so that if I have something out there, I usually let them know
Yeah,
that I'm going out just in case. Basically, you know, CYA,
yeah,
and so that all my bases are covered. And then I ask them every year because I also run the snowmobile groomer
yeah,
for the snowmobile trails and everything up there in Fairfield.
yeah,
And so every year when we go in to get our travel plan for the groomer, I ask them too when we're done to make sure that that I have all the permitting and everything that I need. And so far, it's been a gray area. They say they don't charge like a regular tow truck to go up and get a car,
yeah.
so kind of falls under that category.
Gotcha.
But who knows? Someday that'll probably change and it'll be a
Yeah.
whole permit system. But till
Yep.
then, we'll just keep in good graces with them and go
Exactly.
that route.
Yeah, I mean, having a partnership with all the people that manage the land and law enforcement's a good place to be when you're in the business you're in. So, I do have one question that came in here on the chat, and they're asking me to ask you if you've ever used the Rhino USA recovery gear, so the Yankum ropes and stuff that they have from Rhino USA. I know they're advertised all over the place and stuff too. Have you had any experience with those yet specifically, or do you use a different brand of
No, I
Yankum rope?
haven't.
Okay.
No,
Yep. No worries. No worries.
no, because the only reason I got the Yankum rope was when I was starting the deal. It came up as at Christmas time
Yeah.
as like one of their Black Friday deals or something
Gotcha.
like that, and I was just like, oh, well, that'll be handy to have.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So, so that's the only reason I even that I have that one.
Very
So
good, very good. So, do you have any one particular recovery that was like just extreme circumstances or extremely complicated or anything like that that you want to get into a little bit of a story of like one specific one, or if you haven't already talked about it in some of your examples that you've already shared? So,
the like the one in Montana, that one was that was like the most. We were exhausted
wow.
by the end of it. And I have one buddy that he goes and helps me quite a bit, Vince Edlin,
Okay.
and he's we've been riding for years together, and I'd always push his limits. Find where his button's at, and I'd put him right there at the edge, and just keep pushing him. And finally, on that recovery there, he was like, "You had me at the end of my talent." So I was exhausted. Because this one here, we ended up we were leapfrogging snowmobiles to get out,
Wow.
and so we'd ride it a few hundred yards forward, and then we'd end up having to crawl
Hmm.
back to the other one because we couldn't stand up and walk,
Yeah.
and it was just tight ravine, a lot of downfall
Wow.
and stuff we had to get over, and then getting in there because I took there was three of us that went on that one, and we got in there, and I ended up finally we just took me and Vince took the other sleds and just went in to try and find it because all I had was an Onyx pin,
Yeah.
and they came in from a different way, so we didn't even have their tracks to follow.
Yeah.
So we just started in kind of following this motorcycle trail that it showed the sled was on
Okay.
and making loops, and finally got in there. I told Vince that if he could cross the creek and come in on the other side, to do that. So he finally found a way across the creek and over all the downfall,
Yeah.
gets above the sled, and I tell him, no, don't drop down that. So he ended up having to go back out and
Man.
then find another way. And finally, drop down into it. And then right as we got to the sled, three other guys happened to drop in from the top, kind of following their old tracks.
Yeah.
And they're like, there's no way you're going out the top. So I was like, well, out the bottom it is.
There you
So
go.
we ended up just starting and battling that sled and getting it back out through the bottom. And
Wow.
finally got back out to where I could go get our third guy, Travis, and come back in to where I could ride in double with him. And when I got out there, I was like, so how long were we in there? And he's like, you've been gone 4.5 hours. And I thought it'd only been like an hour and a half. But yeah, we were white by the time we got out of that one. We got back to the parking lot at like, it was like 8:30 at night on that one. So
Wow.
it was after dark.
That's crazy.
And loaded up, headed back. So
Yeah.
then we had like a 4.5 hour drive home. So
Sounds like a long day. Got your work cut out for you in that one. So if myself or somebody watching the show were to have themselves in some kind of a situation that they would need to call you and quote unquote, if I'm going to be a best case customer or a victim or whatever you want to call it, what can I do as the person calling you, as your customer? What can I do to make the recovery go as smooth as possible? And I'm thinking about things like, is there, GPS, I don't want to give it all away, but like, GPS coordinates, marking trails, like giving you pictures, description, like talk me through like what's a really good scenario for you to have from me if you're going to go recover my snowmobile or side by side or whatever it is out in the mountains, because it's not like we can just follow road signs in some cases, right? Like sometimes these things are out in the middle
yeah,
of the woods, literally.
yep. Because that's a good question too. Because a lot of people just like, I don't know what to do or. So, but yeah, if they can do like a pin, like an Onyx pin or Google Maps, I've done them
Yeah.
off both of them,
Yeah.
and do that and even track the way they come out.
Yeah.
That helps me, plan a way in, back into it. And then if they can go too, then that speeds it up big time because then
Yeah.
I'm not, because they can usually just beeline in right to where it's at.
Gotcha.
Otherwise, I got to go in and have the pin and then figure out my own route
Yeah.
in there. And because,
Well, and I'm thinking about
not many.
at $150 an hour, it's probably in my best interest to give you a route in a specific location versus sending you in on a wild goose chase and having you hunt around for my machine for 3 hours, right? Because time is
Yeah.
money. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's what, and that's what helps too is the pin to where it's at and even pictures of what's around it
gotcha.
so that if it is broke down, I can see, if I have stuff to tether off to,
Yeah.
because I have the gas powered winch, that one there. They're always fun when I get that winch out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, but yeah, and then I can see, kind of have an idea of what to tether off to and how, like my strategy plan, to start bringing it out before I get there.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha.
but yeah, pins, and then because yeah, I'll research it on Onyx, Google Maps, Google Earth, all of them, just looking for different ways in and terrain, and then I watch the avalanche conditions
Yeah. Good
and the
call.
weather.
Yep.
So, because a lot of the time, if there's a big storm, if I can, get there before the storm, I like to get them out before the storm comes in.
Amen.
And but yeah, I do a lot of planning around the avalanche conditions and
Yeah.
the weather.
Yeah, yeah. And so on the phone too, when we were talking, is it sounds like you're looking at starting to shift your day job versus your kind of side hustle here with Backcountry Recoveries into eventually, like maybe this will become your full-time gig eventually. And so what's your vision for the business as far as like where do you see it going, and at what point do you think you'll be able to make this a full-time process? And is there some big unlock, or maybe it's about awareness and helping get the word out about your business in order to kind of keep you busier? Is that part of the process? So
Yeah,
tell me what you're thinking about your goals for the business. So
because yeah, I'm always expanding, adding things, and updating my summertime recovery stuff now. I'm looking at
Yeah.
a couple different options there of pieces of equipment to get. And but yeah, if it gets busy enough and takes off where I can make it a full time deal, then I'd love to do that. But if not, I got a pretty good gig at work too, and and they're pretty flexible, with it on letting me, work around it.
Yeah.
There's only been a couple of them that I've actually taken off and went and
Yeah.
done. Most of them, are stuff that we plan for the weekends and that. So
Gotcha.
yeah,
Gotcha.
it all depends on basically clientele.
Yeah. Well,
So
let's talk about that for a minute then, if we can kind of get the word out about your business and what you do, and because here's the thing: is you're based on where you're at. I mean, tell me if I'm wrong here, but you're probably within a somewhat easy drive to some of the biggest snowmobile destinations around. Like, tell me if some of these are off the list, but you're probably not far from like Alpine, Wyoming, West
yeah,
Yellowstone, Montana. Probably a little bit farther over to Cook City, but I bet that's not off the table either. Cook City is probably
nope,
not too far away. How about McCall? Probably McCall's not too far away for you, right?
nope. Calls there. I'll even
Yeah.
travel to Washington.
Yeah,
So
I mean, so it's, I mean, there's some that are a long way that like, okay, if there's somebody local that can
yep,
help them, but the problem is like, there's not a lot of your kind of businesses just available anywhere, right? But there's a
yeah,
lot of resources, but it's going to get spendy when people start going, multiple states away, like Washington. But I'm thinking like even Utah, like you're not that far away from, northern Utah, even if somebody's down there snowmobiling
yep.
or out side by side too,
No,
right?
I'm only a couple hours away from
Yeah.
Utah.
So for the Rocky Mountains, you're pretty centrally located and can help out a lot of people. And so I think that's what our goal
Yep,
is tonight, is to just drive some awareness of, what your business is, what you're doing for the community. And this truly is a service to the community. And, it's a service that doesn't come for free. And I've had friends and helpers that have gone out and we've done full day recoveries on our own with probably not even close to
yep,
great as equipment as you have. And like, you may not have friends left when you're done, because if you start rounding up three,
yeah,
four, five friends and you're eating up their entire weekend, or they have to take a day off of work to go out and get your stuff, like sometimes it's easier just to call the professional and let them do the work. And so
yep,
you and I chatted about like, if people will share the show out and get the word out, I think everybody hopes that they never have to call you, because that means they've never had a
yeah,
problem, right? And I think the
yep,
reality is like, the people who are even watching the show tonight or tomorrow or whenever they watch it this week, they may not even personally ever need you, but guess what? We all know people who know people who know people that like we
yep,
hear through the grapevine of like, so and so needs some help, right? Or whatever. And any good business that has a good reputation out there hopefully will kind of keep you in the back minds of everybody who's watching and
yep,
their friends, so that when a need does arise, just through word of mouth and through referrals, we can get the word out back to you. And so, you know, um,
yeah,
I know, in the chat here, why don't you, when we're done with the show, go into the chat and put your contact information stuff right in the show notes here. We'll make sure that gets in there also. But,
okay,
you had shared with me that you're willing to offer folks who have heard about your business through this show and through us sharing this out, a little bit of a discount. You want to talk about that, and even maybe a bonus
yeah,
donation to a scholarship program that we're supporting. So,
yep. Because basically, if they mention that they hear it through your show, that basically I'll do an hour free, so it'll be like $150 discount,
that's
right off
amazing.
the top. And then I think I've decided that whether they hear the show or not, I like the scholarship deal that you're doing.
That's awesome.
So I think I'm just going to set aside like $20 for every recovery that I do,
That's
and
amazing,
then I'll
Chad.
just
That's a big
send
deal.
that to the
Yeah.
scholarship.
Yeah.
So
And let me elaborate on that scholarship a little bit, because I'm grateful that you're willing to do that, and that's awesome. And it's quote unquote on the honor system. Like, I'm not going to be enforcing it, whatever. That's literally just you making a goodwill
yep,
offering, and I'll put you in touch with the people who can accept that money on your behalf over at Erie. We'll put you in touch over email. But that scholarship program is legitimately, I mean, it's been in place for almost 3 seasons now, and literally it is helping create avalanche educators in the industry who are out there getting all of us educated. Like right here in Washington, there's a group called Elevated Backcountry who started a business 2 seasons ago, and some of the instructors from that business have gone through their professional avalanche training education, and now they're back serving us as a local snowmobile community right here in the state of Washington, because we've had access to this money that we've raised through the scholarship program. the sweepstakes at the beginning of the show where you get in to win the truck or the sled deck or the riding gear. You can go in and buy tickets and stuff too for that. But building out partnerships in a network like we're doing, like the last episode where you heard about me, Cody at Dynamic Designs. If anybody orders a sled wrap from them and use the promo code LiveLARGE, just throw it in there in the promo code on his website, he'll give you a 5% discount, and he's throwing in $50 to the Live Large Scholarship Program, at Erie. And so now another partnership like yourself where, man, just get the word out, help it out, and you're going to be helping make some donations as well too. And super grateful for that. And collectively, we are making a difference in the community.
Yep. Yeah, and I got confirmation my wrap's supposed to be here Monday too. So.
And you took advantage of that.
Live large down the tunnel. So.
I saw that you sent me a shot of that too. Like, I'm honored to have you represent Live Large on there. And what I tell everybody Live Large is, live life to the fullest, make the most of every day, and make a difference to others, right? And so, a business like Backcountry Recoveries has already been doing that. And with this new referral program and some of the donations we'll be making, Chad, you're absolutely making a difference in this community too. And I'm grateful for our new friendship and partnership. So.
Yep. And then another thing that guys never think about too is, I'd never even really thought about it until I went and got a sled out for a guy. It was another Yamaha, of course, but it was 58 miles round trip on the sled. Yeah. We had to go in and load it and haul it out.
Wow.
And there's a couple spots that he thought that, you could tell from him looking back, being in front of me, that he just thought I was going to be stuck through there and stuff. And I was able just to roll right through it.
Wow.
With the setup I got. And we got back, and he's like, that's the only way to bring a sled out. He says, we've done that before, and we had, like 3 bent bumpers. I don't know how many burnt belts.
Oh, yeah.
And he says, we were at the cost of that and, replacement parts.
Yeah.
On sleds that they tore up.
So. Yeah. Oh, I've watched people tow other sleds out of the backcountry using like stock rear bumpers and stuff that they're tying onto. And every time they break them or bend them at least. And you got to have the right equipment, the right knowledge how to do it. And to your point, rather than busting up your other equipment, just call the professionals, get yourself out there, and make life easy for everybody else. And the more business you get, the more you have the ability to continue to stay there and engaged and keep doing what you're doing. And so it's the circle of life. We just keep all helping each other out and making a difference in the world. So.
Yeah. Because, there's some of them, too, that, if I can make a weekend trip, travel to some of these places abroad.
Yeah.
And I can take some buddies with me. We'll make a weekend trip.
Just go riding.
And, and go riding, too.
That sounds like a dream time. Yeah. That's awesome.
I'm, willing to work into stuff like that, too. So.
Yeah. Little vacation on the side. So cool. Well, Chad, I think we've covered everything we wanted to cover. Is there any final kind of thank yous you have? Like, obviously you've got friends and partners who are helping you out all the time, probably family, friends, everything like that too. Anybody you want to say thank you to that you want to wrap this up with?
I'd like to thank my girlfriend, Morgan, because she puts up with a lot and me traveling all the time. And there's times we'll have something planned and I'll be like, I got a recovery. I got to go do this now.
Yeah.
And then my daughter, JC, part of the time they go with me on some of them if I know they're easy. A lot of them, I'm real selective on who I take.
Yep.
Because, I have to know their riding ability and part of the time I actually don't know what I'm getting into.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, and then some other buddies, JD with 5J Excavation. I'd like to thank him because if there's dozers or excavators, anything like that I need, he, helps me get those lined up. And then another buddy, Brandon Wolf, has a transport. So I've gone and got motorhomes and stuff too. So I mainly try and stick to the off-road stuff, but I've got resources that I can put about anything together. So
very good, very good. Well, thank you for your time tonight. And like I said, if everybody shares this out, you're also going to get entered to win the saws from Mountain Lab, the sponsor of the show tonight. And so, we'll be doing a giveaway here on those, very shortly. In the next few weeks here, we'll probably be doing the giveaway on those once we do the couple of shows that we've shared out. But any other final words before we wrap it up then, Chad?
Let me know who wins the those saws, and give me their contact, and I'll send them a coffee cup and some koozies and some of that stuff too.
Very good, very good. I'll try to remember to do that. So, all right, everybody. Well, thank you all for watching. Appreciate you sharing the show out. If you haven't already, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. But as I tell everybody at the end of every show, God bless you and live large. Have a great night, everybody. Chad, you go ahead and hang on here just a minute. So.
Okay.